Hello there. So for this question, question 7, so the final question, is looking at, I'll be looking at the preliminary task, what we done at the start of the year, and comparing it to the final task which I completed, and just discussing whether I followed the brief, planning, ideas which I set in place, and just comparing between the quality of preliminary task and the final product I created, the images, continuity, professional practice, health and safety regulations which I followed, and just showing how I made modifications and trial and error from the first task to then what I got now. So just looking now, I'm looking at the preliminary tasks, and it's pretty funny just to see how different it is in comparison to what I've done now. I mean, bearing in mind the time period we had, and it was just at the start of the year, so there was much less development of practical skills for Photoshop. It was okay bearing in mind the time period, but it looks very unprofessional. I'm looking at the cover page now. The cover lines are all over the place. They're not neatly located on the page like conventionally. They're on the sides of the page, either the left third or the right third. But these are just warped around one of the boys on the screen. The colours of the text don't really seem appealing because they're very they don't really stand out, especially the white text at the bottom. It just doesn't really stand out very well, and the text font as well. Bearing in mind this was meant to be for a children's magazine, the text is very plain and very adult based, so it doesn't really stand out for children. Bearing in mind on the bottom right third of the page, the text seems a little bit more like bubble writing, which is a really childish form of graffiti, which would appeal to them, but still, it's just very plain. The photography isn't very good because it's just quite generic in terms of there being a very quick and non-planned photograph. One of the boys is even looking down. I didn't even focus too much on how they looked, but now I've definitely focused on the micro features of my final product, based on like facial expressions, non-verbal communication, camera shots. This shows a two-shot. So just to show how within primary schools and social environments, it's just showing how boys and girls get along, especially as children, when their innocence takes over and they're very playful with each other. But it seems very rough, and it doesn't seem professional at all. Even at the contents page, that's even worse. Just looking at that, there's a lack of professionalism here, because the cover lines aren't necessarily grouped together. They're not in a straight column, or they're not. The gaps between them are also varied, so it doesn't look very neat. The images used are very generic and very they weren't original. I just used them from online, and they just look very cheesy and very much of a low standard for this sort of for the placement on the magazine. Even the dots surrounding the whole page, it just looks rough and improvised. And the title, the text, it's just ridiculous in terms of how it doesn't relate to the genre of it being based for children, because this text is so grainy. If you look close, it's so grainy, and it looks very adult based, and it doesn't suit children at all. It just looks plain and boring, simply black, and not multicoloured. which is, I've definitely learnt from that, because now I know. Now I've focused my text and the images used. I've focused on their individual like symbolisms and how they relate to the genre, which was explained in question 5 to do with the analysis parts. I mean, also on the right side, I put like an image, a custom-made image of like a monster, just to make it seem more appealing to children, and it looks pathetic, to be honest. It looks rough, it doesn't look neat, and the use of shapes is just boring, because they're just triangles. It looks really, really of a low standard, and it just doesn't seem attractive, especially for younger audiences, just to look at that. You know, I mean, the quality of shots, I'll go back to the cover page. I mean, it was okay. You know, it's just trying to get a message to show that within a social environment, boys and girls should be getting on equally. It's just showing how there are friendships within like school environments. It's just a way of sort of conditioning people to grow up, especially as kids, to grow up realizing a form of equality between people. But this was effective in a way. I mean, it definitely shows a link and relationship between the two. But when I look at my cover page now, and you know, it looks a lot better, because I'm portraying my artist a lot more physically, and showing that he's by himself. I mean, I guess it's quite generic what I'm saying, but most of it was explained in question 5. But I've definitely improved on continuity of imagery. For example, using the same artist throughout the pages. I mean, I only used these two children here. I used them only for the cover page. And the contents page, if you look at the third image underneath the teacher, I mean, you can see only the girls, and you can't even tell it's her. So it just looks it just lacks continuity, and it just doesn't seem professional. But now I've used the artist throughout the entire process, and it looks a lot more professional, a lot more like the magazine is focusing on this specific artist. So it looks a lot better. Lighting, I definitely focused a lot more on lighting than I did on this initial task, because I mean, let's face it, if you look at it, all you can see is just front lighting. It just looks all at the front, so it's, I guess in a way it links to an emphasis of innocence and genuineness, but that was mainly just because of the sunny day. There was no meaning behind that. But now, when I look at like the cover, not just the cover page, all the pages with my artists on there, the use of lighting is there to symbolise a certain meaning, which is explained in like question 5, for example, the ambient lighting surrounding the artist as though submerged, due to his role in the art industry, based on him being so involved in club environments that he's constantly submerged due to his career. You know, things like this, to be honest. I mean, also looking at the image of, let me see if it loads. Okay, so on the cover page, I used like a gradient scheme. So, just to show like a dual aspect to his life, like two-sided, just to show there's a contrast between his life, based on the contrast of colours. It's just like a hidden meaning for the audience to target. But also, if you look closely, there's a shadow on his right side of the face, because because most of the lighting was coming from one side. So that again shows there's a dark side of him and a bright side of him. So it's just a way of symbolising different meanings and significances of people's lives based on lighting. Like it's just, I mean, I could analyse it now. You know, the dark side representing negativity, the bright side representing a positive aspect. So just something for the audience to interpret him being two-faced, maybe, or just having two sides of his life, which could be read later on in the article. You know, which increases the enticement for people to continue reading because they want to find out what other side he has. You know, even on the double page spread, the lighting, I mean, he's dark on one side, closest to one side of his face, but the other side is completely bright, just to again add this emphasis of contrast into life, and just to emphasise him being submerged by lighting. You know, but at the start there was no consideration of this. You know, the image as well. I mean, the images, the quality was definitely better in physically for the final task, because I was able to use a camera with better resolution, because the initial camera used was just from a generic phone camera, which the quality wasn't too good. I mean, it was okay. But if it was being published, it would have looked blatantly of a low quality camera, and that's solely, you know, based on timing. Like, it wasn't really possible to get a decent camera borrowed to get these images. But then I learned, as a result of this era of planning, to plan photography in advance, that I could have enough time to find a decent camera and to use it when necessary. You know, I mean, I definitely focused a lot more in terms of quality of images based on the camera angles, camera shots. I definitely focused a lot more on this for the final product. For example, you know, mid shots used both in the contents page and cover page to present the artist's, you know, torso and head, up to the head, sorry, just to show how, just to express his gestures and facial expressions, to show how they all link together to present an overall physical display and attitude of his involvement, his actions within his career, like, you know, showing his involvement with the DJ mixer, and on the cover page, the involvement of him showing his presenting himself as though exposing himself to the audience, as though he's exposing his talent to them. So there's a lot more significance in this. And then the close-up on the double page spread is just to show his true emotions, so that the audience can interpret his sincerity within his career. So, you know, I definitely focused a lot more on these aspects, and the props and costume were used consistently, just to show how his physical appearance exposed to the audience is consistent and not just put on, if you know what I mean. So it's just showing that he isn't false, because what he does and presents to people is not just for a show, but also to present himself on a regular basis. So he's not pretending to be someone he isn't. He's just constantly being who he is, just to show that he isn't someone who tries to please one person, but then pretends to be genuine, but really is actually not a nice guy. He's actually showing that he is who he is. So if you like him, then continue reading. If you don't, then don't. It's just showing his true inner style, basically. If you see it, I mean it was a little bit generic, what I just said. And the props as well. I mean, the use of the sunglasses, I guess it could be costume as well, but it's just showing that he's constantly a mysterious person, and he doesn't want people to know his true identity, maybe. And this also shows that he isn't putting it on. Like, he genuinely could be quite a shy person, quite a sincere person. He doesn't want to embrace reality by taking off the glasses. So just trying to emphasize the consistency of his inner feelings. And this wasn't really the case for the starting tasks. I mean, like, the image, as I said, wasn't used consistently. There was a lack of thought within the image. I mean, for example, I could have used more of a wide shot rather than a two shot or mid shot shown on the front cover, because you can barely see him. I mean, you can't really tell that they've just come from school, except for the uniform, but you can't tell because they're not wearing. You can't see if they're completely wearing uniform. You can't see if they're carrying a bag. I mean, you can see slightly, but you can't tell if they're carrying a school bag easily. Only you can see the strap on the boy, but it doesn't really show it very well. So if it was maybe zoomed out a little bit, and if it was shown as a wide shot, you could see the full uniform, just to emphasise that they truly were school students, and also you could see the bag easily, just to emphasise that they'd just come back from school, or they were in a school environment. Small micro features like that definitely affect the overall impact of representation. So when it came to managing equipment and resources, deadlines, all these factors, I began with a production schedule. So I set out pretty much when I needed certain tasks to be completed, and when deadlines were, when I needed to get certain equipment like the cameras used, and then when I in harmony in synchronization to when I needed to begin implementing images into the cover pages or any other page. For example, getting the camera a day before starting the actual production of the pages would have been a bad idea, because you can't check if the images are suitable or not a day before, because there could have been a corrupt file, or some of the images may not have turned out okay if you didn't check it properly. So having it a day before the day you're meant to start editing is not a good idea, because you'd have to do it again and then you'd be behind schedule. So so I followed this pretty well. I mean some of it was I was a little bit behind on, but it was still in my head in terms of how if I'm behind here, I need to stay after school to do this, or so I was definitely focused on certain deadlines. So I needed to, and even though some of the times I went a little bit over the deadline for what I already set out, I'd already keep that in mind, and use lunchtime sessions or after school sessions just to complete the task and stay on track. And that was definitely beneficial, because this is how I was able to complete the tasks on time, and definitely made me have enough. It definitely increased my time management skills and helped me manage other schoolwork from other subjects, not just media itself, but it definitely helped with media, because especially there's so much coursework, it definitely helped me get certain parts done within a time period so that I had enough time to do the others. When it came to health and safety, there weren't really any health and safety regulation, any hazards. Just the computers we used. So obviously they were electrical. The screens were quite bright, so I had to make sure that I didn't drink right in front of the computer, like I'd go back a little bit and then drink, just so I avoided any damage or electric shocks. A bit extreme, but and I take every hour on the computer. I'd get up, go next door for a little walk, just to rest my eyes, just to move around a little bit, and then come back. Just also, it didn't hurt. It prevents strain on my neck, on my eyes, on my back. So it was just a bit of exercise just to avoid pains in the future. And that it definitely helped. I mean, sometimes I had a few headaches if I was on the computer for a long time, especially for the editing process, but it definitely avoided certain risks because I didn't experience them as a result of these, so that definitely was beneficial. So in terms of organising, the artist I used, I followed the planning process and the photography image process by making sure that I got the photos of him before the editing process had to start. So this definitely gave me enough time to look over the images to see if there were any flaws in them, see if I had to do any more. And I also took more than one image just in case one image would turn out better than the other. So that was another part of time management and planning, which I thought increased the efficiency of the whole process, definitely. There was no need to manage the the model locations and costume and props, because I provided the costumes and I provided the prop, which is arguably the glasses, sunglasses, and I provided it to the model, and I brought it whenever we needed to do photography. So that was definitely, I feel, an organised impact. It had an organised impact, so it definitely decreased the time utilisation of the whole process, and allowed me to edit faster as less time was needed for photography. And I made sure that the model was able to be there and get dressed and for me to take photos of, because I used him for the art for his magazine, and he used me. So we had sort of like a trade-off, where if you do this for me in this time period, then I'll be nice to you and I'll give you my time. So it was definitely a form of an agreement just to improve time allocation, especially with such a crucial deadline at stake. So with the my original plan, I was planning on using my artist. I was planning on having like a 3-dimensional front cover. So the artist would be like this. He'd be doing that, and he'd be here, and it'd be like a mid shot, but obviously the hands would be closer to the screen. I just thought that was it would look like a nice idea, because if everything else is 3-dimensional, or the triangle looks 3-dimensional, it adds to the technological aspect of the genre of electro. But then after practicing, I was looking at how to make 3D layers, like how to make them one layer blue, one layer red, and then separate them. I was looking at it with an example, and I just thought it looked really messy and looked unprofessional, so I cut that out straight away. And then I implemented with a cover page the artist posing with his arms out, and then that was my second plan. But then I thought, you know what, I'll modify his arms just to make it look even more futuristic and robotic, to link to this sort of aspect to the genre, a futuristic aspect, and it definitely made it look a lot more creative and a lot more futuristic and related to the genre, just because I thought that it would make it stand out and appeal to the audience because it looks so different, and it relates a lot to the genre, which is what they're looking for in the first place when looking through newsstands and magazine shelves. And when it came to the contents page, I was just planning on having a plain and generic, not plain necessarily, but a layout of the contents, like page 1, page 3, page 5, all in a straight line. And I thought I could implement electronic sound bars, which is usually found in DJ mixes. So I just thought I could put that in there because it makes it more colourful, and it also enables me to input text in between the gaps between each bar, and it not only looked nice, but it also related a lot to the genre, and occupied more space rather than just being plain and boring as well. So it definitely had a big impact on the overall look. And also I was just thinking of having the artist stay there by himself, but then I thought that it looked quite boring without there being any relevance toward the genre. So then I thought, for the contents page, I edited a DJ mixer, and I just thought that it definitely made it look a lot more linked to the genre, and it shows what the artist is involved in and what form of electro he's in, whether it's older or more contemporary, and more modern, on the basis of him physically using and creating his own music with a DJ mixer. And it definitely made it a lot more relatable to the genre, definitely. And one more thing, which was really, 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 really fundamentally important and crucial in terms of decision making, was the implementation of. Sorry, one second. Sorry, let me just charge it. Was the implementation of the ambient background, the purple ambient. I mean, that was a really important idea, because it brought together the whole link and involvement between the artist within the genre and the environment and atmosphere that he deals with on a regular basis because of his involvement within the genre. So that linked the artist much closer to the genre, and it not only made him seem submerged within that physically and mentally within the genre, but it also brought colour. I mean, it brought colour and the futuristic vibe to the page and the magazine as a whole. I mean, it definitely would attract the audience, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for plainness, because the idea of having a futuristic format is to bring in new colours and new designs and a lack of plainness, especially in terms of fashion. And this variety of colour definitely increased, the idea of such colourful fashion and colourful standards and expectations of the audience. It was definitely a fundamental factor of significance.